right, good. I guess it's going to be morning when you see this. So, good morning, class, and welcome to week number 7. That is right, week number 7 of your 7314 class, which is your reference class. As always, I am your professor, Dr. J.S.K. Austin, and what we are going to be doing today is we are going to do a few state of the course updates, and then we are going to listen as I do my spiel on Wikipedia, because there are some things that I want to say in order to contextualize the Wikipedia edit assignment that you all have going on. The assignment may seem a little out of place, but if you watch this video, it probably will add some context, explain why it's being done, explain a few things about Wikipedia, and hopefully you will embrace the assignment a little more after you watch this. So first things first, state of the course updates. I do want to let you all know that I am in the process of grading those virtual reference assignments. There are some other things going on. We're doing admissions work and things like that right now. So there are a few things commanding my attention, but I will get the ball rolling a little more on the grading for those virtual reference assignments once the admissions work is done. So that is on the horizon. Also, as far as discussions have been good. I will be placing discussion grades, entering discussion grades in a little later towards the week. Some of the outstanding discussion grades that you all have, at least. And what I want to do from here is to let you all know that the things that you have to pay attention to, first of all, next week, next Tuesday, we are going to have Selena Morgan coming in, and she's going to be talking about services to the differently abled. So that'll be on Tuesday, March the 8th. Attendance is mandatory. Please be there. And I do think that especially if you care about services to the differently abled, I do think that you're going to really, really enjoy that presentation. And Selena is a very warm and very nice speaker. The other thing that I want to let you know or remind you of is that your Wikipedia edit assignments are going to be due on March the 20th. So that's the major assignment that you have due this month. So be working. You're really at the time where you should really be putting in some good work on that semester-long project, because the discussion boards have slowed down, and your next major assignment, really, to be honest with you, yes, the Wikipedia edit assignment, it is a major assignment worth 13 points. But at the same time, people have told me that they get the Wikipedia edit assignment done in like 1 or 2 days. So if you're one of those people who can do that, then by all means, please be working on the semester-long project. March is a good time to really, really be working on that, in part because, as you will see, the next discussion 6, isn't due until April the 10th. So you don't have any discussion boards that are due in March. So again, now is the time to really, really pick up some steam as far as working on that semester-long project, okay? So those are the state of the course updates, really, and from there, without any further ado, because there is a lot to say about Wikipedia, so we are going to hop right into Wikipedia, okay? So here's the thing about Wikipedia and you all having to do this assignment. So prior to the emergence of the internet, encyclopedias were generally how reference librarians really got their searches started when they were helping people find information. So prior to the emergence of the internet, what you would have is somebody would ask a reference question, and the reference librarian would go over to the encyclopedias usually and start learning and doing background information, background discovery and that sort of thing. And then from there, they would find other sources that would be useful in order to help the patron learn more about the subject that they were trying to research. The internet has changed a lot of that. In fact, a lot of libraries these days just do not have, they don't dedicate the amount of space to encyclopedias that they did like back even. Some of you are actually old enough, and I am old enough. I was born in 1983. So I'm old enough to remember the late 80s, and I'm old enough to remember the 90s. In fact, I consider myself having grown up in the 90s. And so I would say that, back then, I do remember when we had all those encyclopedias and everything, and They would take up a lot of space, and there would be plenty of them. You would have Britannica and some others, and that's where I would go. In elementary school, I would go to the library, and I would go to the encyclopedias, and basically I would plagiarize the encyclopedias, to be honest with you, when I was doing my elementary school research. But having said that, the internet has changed the game, and now what happens is a lot of times when librarians get a request for information and it's a topic that's unfamiliar to them, what they do is they tend to go to the these days they tend to a lot of times do a Google search, and a lot of times they will go to Wikipedia first just to get that background information that they need in order to start researching and fulfilling the reference requests that they get. The reason that I say this is because there Wikipedia there's ever since Wikipedia has emerged, there has been this phenomenon within higher education, or actually within all education, K-12 and higher education, to sort of write off Wikipedia and to tell people to never use it and all of these things, to tell librarians to never trust it, never tell their students that it can be a useful resource and all of these things. And we need to kind of start allowing people to unlearn that, because the truth of the matter is, for one thing, Wikipedia does not have an accuracy issue. A lot of times people will erroneously say that Wikipedia has these accuracy issues, and that's why you don't want to rely on it. Now, there are some issues that Wikipedia has, but accuracy really is not the issue. In fact, Wikipedia has been found to be pretty much as accurate as Encyclopedia Britannica and those sorts of things. And that's in part because Wikipedia has probably one of the best mass peer editing systems that's ever been devised. Okay? But so you don't want to write off Wikipedia and say, oh, it's useless and no librarian should ever do anything with it. Wikipedia is great for doing background information, finding background information when you're trying to learn more about a topic that a patron has come to you with. And Wikipedia is very good as far as following links. So you'll see like the footnotes in Wikipedia, and you'll see the links. And a lot of times you can go to those footnotes. You'll be taken to the end of the Wikipedia article, and then you can pursue the original article, where the information came from, and a lot of times that information actually is useful. But there are some other issues with Wikipedia. So I would say don't get in the habit of telling people that Wikipedia is always inaccurate. And there are times when Wikipedia will actually suffice as the source that you can give to somebody. I would say that might not happen too often, but it's not unheard of. And I'll give you an example. Actually, when I was working at the public library, we had a gentleman who would come in, and he was there every day. And we called him Slim. And Slim, one thing that he would do every day is he would do a crossword puzzle. And so Slim would come in, he'd do his crossword puzzle. And a lot of times when he was stumped, he'd come to the librarians and ask us for help. And for his crossword puzzle, because, yeah, it was something that he did to pass the time. And so I wouldn't say that it wasn't a serious reference concern. But at the same time, we're not talking about something he's being graded on, or something that's like health information or something like that. It's something that he's doing for recreation. And so for something like that, it was perfectly fine to use Wikipedia to help him find the information that he was looking for, because he could use, we could point him to Wikipedia. He wasn't somebody who could actually use a computer. He didn't have good computer skills. So we would actually help him find the crossword puzzle answers through Wikipedia, and then actually just turn the screen over to him, and he'd read a little bit of the Wikipedia article, learn a little bit, be kind of satisfied, and go on about his way and finish his crossword puzzles. One of my favorite patrons of all time. I miss Slim. But having said that, yes, there are rare examples like that where Wikipedia can be okay to actually use as the source. But definitely when you're talking about health information, or you're talking about occupational information, or you're talking about assignments that are being graded and things like that, you don't want to rely on Wikipedia for those things. Now, the reason you don't want to rely on Wikipedia for those things is not because of accuracy. Wikipedia has two other issues. Wikipedia's issues as to why we don't use it as the go-to source in the library realm for serving our patrons is because of authority and stability. Okay, so that's different from saying that, oh, Wikipedia is inaccurate. Wikipedia, again, is not inaccurate. It's pretty much as accurate as Encyclopedia Britannica. But what Wikipedia is not is it's not stable, and it's also not something where you can really assess authority. And so I'm going to explain those two concepts right now. So when we talk about stability, the thing about Encyclopedia Britannica or most articles that come in periodicals or books and those sorts of things is that these things, when we say that they're stable, what we're saying is that these things tend to say the same thing from one day to the next, and from 1 week to the next, and from 1 month to the next. And so those things are stable. The issue with Wikipedia is that it's not stable. And the reason that it's not stable is because Wikipedia can say something one day and it can say something else an hour later. And it can still be accurate. That's the thing. So Russia's been in the news lately. All right. I'm actually gonna, this is gonna be a weird example. It's gonna be an unrealistic example, but you'll get the point. So, for those of you who are very young, Russia used to be part of this bigger country called the USSR. And let's say that the USSR, I think, fell somewhere around 1991 or something like that. So let's say that the USSR, well, let's say that the internet was available back in the 1980s. Let's say that the World Wide Web was around in the 1980s. And Wikipedia, therefore, was around in the 1980s. A Wikipedia page in 1989 for the USSR could say that the USSR is a country, and it would be accurate. But then in 1995, the same Wikipedia page would say that the USSR was a country, and that would also be accurate. Because due to time, yes, in 1989, the USSR is a country, but in 1995, the USSR was a country. So I hope that makes sense. And if you can understand that, then what I'm getting at when I say that is that, if you have a newspaper article that was talking about the USSR in 1989, that same newspaper article is going to say the exact same thing in 1995, even after the USSR is dissolved. So that article is really, really stable, okay? But with Wikipedia, again, Wikipedia can change within an hour or within a few minutes. So the problem with using Wikipedia as a source is because since it's unstable, you don't want to rely on it as a source because the information can change, it can be updated, and so you don't want to cite something as a source and then come back to that same source, that same web page, and it says something completely different, even if it says something completely different in order to preserve accuracy or to correct. All right, so that's why we say that it's unstable. Anyone can go in there and edit Wikipedia. It can be edited at any time. And so you don't want to rely, for more serious purposes, you really don't want to rely on citing sources that say something different from 1 minute to the next. And that is something that Wikipedia is famous for. Wikipedia is going to say different things at different times. The same article is going to say different things at different times. That's the nature of Wikipedia, and that's why we say it's unstable, okay? So you have that issue. The second issue, when I talk about authority, I'm talking about who's authoring these articles. And we don't know a lot of times who is, even though there are ways to go in and, track those changes and see what IP addresses are making the changes and things like that, and what usernames are making the changes and things like that. At the end of the day, you still have to really, really dig in order to see what human being is making what change to what Wikipedia article at any given time. And so that's an authorship issue. What we like to do when we are talking about information literacy and pointing people to proper sources and that sort of thing is we like to be able to tell people that this article or this book or this whatever, this source was written by this person, and here's who this person is, and these are the biases that this person may have. Okay. And so it's very useful, for instance, to do this, especially when you are, in most cases, it's very useful to do that, but especially when you are, for instance, looking at, let's say you're looking at health information. And let's say that you are, looking at an article written by a actual general practitioner, physician, somebody who is a medical doctor. And let's say they write an article about the spine, okay? And then let's say that a chiropractor authors an article about the spine. Now, I don't want to bias anyone against chiropractors, and I know a lot of people who use chiropractors and things like that, but chiropractors, that is an area of health and medicine that there's still, I would just say the verdict, in order to not get myself in trouble, I would say that the verdict is still out on chiropractors and, how effective they are and whether or not they should be relied on and trusted and that sort of thing. But if I'm looking at an article about the spine that's written by a chiropractor, I'm probably not going to trust it as much as I would trust something that's written by even a general practitioner, medical doctor. But especially somebody who, I don't know what medical doctors actually specialize in spinal issues, but I would say if there's a medical doctor out there who really, really specializes in the spine and spinal issues, then that's who I want to, and that person authors an article, I am going to hands down trust that person a lot more than I'm going to trust the chiropractor. Okay. Again, no offense to anyone who, I'm not trying to discourage you from using chiropractors or anything. And certainly if you do use a chiropractor and you're having good results, I don't want to turn you away from that. But again, that's just an example to try to illustrate my point. And so also when you look at authorship and authority, one thing that you want to pay attention to, again, is what biases, the author has, both blatant biases and then things that may be more, covert biases. So, if I'm looking at a author who is writing for, I don't know, like, let's say that I'm reading something that's written by Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, for those of you who don't know, yeah, he's a columnist for, I believe, the Daily Wire, at least he was, and he is a very biased, conservative political commentator. Now, that bias isn't necessarily bad. I think that everyone has some bias, and I think that neutrality, especially in libraries, is actually rather impossible to actually achieve. And if you want to discuss that more, take the intellectual freedom class in the fall. But when we talk about neutrality, let's say that we've got an objective reporter for some news source, and then we've got something written by somebody who is intentionally not objective, like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro may write something to slant the facts to serve a political agenda, a conservative political agenda. And by the same token, maybe if you read something that's written by Malcolm Nance, maybe Malcolm Nance is writing something to specifically advance a more liberal or progressive agenda. And then let's say that you have, I'll use my friend from college, Anne Brannigan, who reports for the Washington Post. Anne is a objective reporter for the Washington Post. So if you see her byline, she's probably not trying to actually blatantly advance an opinionated, political objective, conservative or liberal. She's probably just trying to, as best as she can, present the facts and present reporting on the facts, or present somebody else's opinions, but do so in a way that helps to build context to a story or a situation. Okay, so those are the types of things that we have to look at when we talk about authority and authorship. It's good to know who is actually writing these articles and what these that we read, or these books that we read, or whatever. It's good to know who writes them, and it's good to know why they're writing them. It's good to know what credentials they have to talk about those things. Dr. Jace, I can talk about I can talk about librarianship in a very objective way if I were to start writing some sort of like if I became some sort of libraries reporter or something like that. And I used to be a newspaper reporter, by the way. But if I were like specifically some reporter for that covered libraries or something like that, I could probably actually do that very objectively and just present the facts and present two sides of an argument without biasing the article in favor of one side over another. But I probably wouldn't. I have the credentials to do that because libraries are my background, and plus I've got a journalism background. But I might not necessarily be able to write an informative essay or something like that related to, let's say, again, general practicing. I probably could not actually write a good article about how to keep your spine in its best health, because I am not a medical doctor. I am not a nurse. I have no medical training, nursing training, or any sort of training like that whatsoever. So if you see my name as the byline for something about how to keep your spine in its best shape, take it with a grain of salt, because what the hell do I know? The answer to that is nothing. All right. So that's what we talk about with authority. And when it comes to Wikipedia, yes, it is very hard to tell who is writing this stuff. Okay. You really have to dig in order to find that out. And then still, once you find out who is making these edits and who's writing this and that, you still don't necessarily know what their objectives are. You want to look at things in good faith and assume that what they're doing is they are presenting information through Wikipedia to help out their fellow human beings. And I think most people on Wikipedia, that's what they're about. However, that does not mean that that's what everybody is about. Okay. And so that's why one thing that bothers me in the current landscape is a lot of people are actually in the current information consumption landscape. A lot of people are taking to heart what they're reading on social media, and we're not even exactly sure that the people on social media are who they are claiming to be. Especially Twitter, but also to a lesser extent Facebook and some other things. I've seen people, I'm on Twitter a lot. I deleted my Facebook, but I'm on Twitter a lot. And I see people on Twitter and they start just engaging in all kinds of stuff with just accounts that are probably not serious accounts, that are troll accounts, that are accounts from troll farms. These accounts might be accounts that are specifically passing themselves off as American accounts, but are actually accounts that are based in maybe Russia or China or somewhere like that, and they're actually trying to undermine the authority of the American government, or try to turn the American people against each other or something like that. So you really have to be careful with authority, okay? And so that's why with Wikipedia, you can't be but so careful with authority, because you don't know who the authors are, okay? So those are very important things to remember. And so from there, I am going to talk about two things that I really want y'all to keep in mind as you go into your library careers, and explore these various things related to authority and when not to use Wikipedia and all of that stuff. So let me pull up a couple of pages here. The first thing that I wanted to show you all was this. When I talk about authority, there are there's some things that kind of alarm me about this, and there are some things that alarm me about Wikipedia in general, because Wikipedia allows for this to happen. So Wikipedia probably gets millions, if not billions, of hits per day. Probably every day that I'm on the internet, I go on Wikipedia at some point, but I don't know who's writing this stuff. And so if somebody is spending a lot of time on Wikipedia just writing and writing and writing, then that person is probably going to have a lot of influence on the information landscape, and a lot of people don't even know it. So one thing that I always like to show my students when I talk about this is that this guy here, Stephen Pruitt, is believed to be responsible, and this article actually is a few years old, so there's probably been an increase of this, but Stephen Pruitt is believed to have edited or contributed, I should say, not edited, but Stephen Pruitt is estimated to have contributed about a third of the information that is on Wikipedia has probably been added or edited by Stephen Pruitt. Those are estimates. And Wikipedia is huge. So when we talk about a third of that information, and that is not something I'm making up, that's actually been in a news article about him, that it's believed that he has edited a third of the, or he's manipulated in some way a third of the information that's on Wikipedia. That's pretty scary. This guy actually has a lot of influence on the information landscape. And not that many people even know he exists. This guy, Wikipedia may be the most commonly used information source now, and this guy is responsible for a third of it, and we don't know really what his agenda is. We do know his name, we know he's Stephen Pruitt, we know where he lives, and now, thankfully, there is actually a Wikipedia page about him, so you can learn about him. But this is, who is he? Who the hell is this guy? He was named one of the 25 most important influencers on the internet, and yet he does most of what he does from the shadows. It's not like he's some YouTube video blogger who makes himself known. He's not somebody like, let's say, if you're on YouTube, you might be familiar with MatPat or The Amazing Atheist or, these various people. Those people are known, and they're actually trying to be kind of like YouTube celebrities, but this guy is not trying to be a celebrity. He actually operates largely from the shadows, but he is one of the internet is huge, and he's believed to be one of the 25 most important influencers on the internet, yet he is operating from the shadows. And we do assume and hope that he is operating in good faith, and that all he's doing is doing this as a hobby because he enjoys it, and he enjoys giving his fellow human being information, reliable information. And if that's all that it's about, that's great. But what if this guy has like some sinister intent? You know what I'm saying? What if this guy is somebody who is actually attempting to I don't know, what if he has some nefarious idea? Like, what if he is trying to, take some sort of stance undercover that could be controversial if it were known that he was trying to do it? Like, for instance, and I hate to use this example, but it's probably the most contentious example in the world to think of. What if Stephen Pruitt is secretly either trying to advance some pro-Palestinian agenda or some pro-Israeli agenda, right? And I'm not saying that he is trying to do either of those things. To my knowledge, he's not. But let's say that undercover, what Stephen Pruitt is trying to do is trying to turn people against the Palestinians or trying to turn people against the Israelis. That'd be some really scary stuff if all of that is going on and he's the only one who knows he's doing it, right? So when I look at this, to me, it's scary because it does show the potential for somebody to come into the information landscape and try to duplicate what he's doing. We know that foreign governments have used Facebook and Twitter to, again, try to sow discord among Americans. Is believed that both the Russians and the Chinese have done this. And I'm not trying to stir, if anybody is of Russian or Chinese descent, I'm not trying to upset you or trying to turn people against you or anything like that. But I'm just saying that, it's known that there are troll farms that are operated by Putin and by China that target Americans. This is known. And so, what if the people that use Twitter and Facebook to do this, what if they started using Wikipedia to do this and we didn't even know? That's some very scary stuff, in my opinion. And you can actually make this a full-time job for people, and they could end up having just millions of Wikipedia edits, just like Stephen Pruitt does. And that could really take us down a dangerous road if we don't know that this is happening. Just like I do think that it has already taken us down a dangerous road, that before we actually knew that these foreign troll farms existed on social media, we listened to people and thought that they were legitimately arguing in good faith, and really they were just saying things to try to turn Americans against each other. And I see the United States as being a very polarized country right now, and I think that's just going to continue. And you know, to polarize the United States even more, Wikipedia may be an untapped resource for that, and to me, that's very scary. So I want to put that out there when we talk about authority and authorship. And the next thing that I do want to talk about, and again, this is actually something that I hope some of you will be motivated to participate in later on in your careers. So another thing that I want to talk about when it comes to Wikipedia, if you enjoy the Wikipedia edit assignment, then one thing you might want to consider doing is participating in the future in Wikipedia editathons. And Wikipedia editathons, they happen actually quite frequently. And what the editathons do is a lot of times the editathons either feature librarians or they feature experts in a field. And they just devote time to going into Wikipedia and improving the articles in Wikipedia. Okay. And there are various ways that they can be improved. So they can be improved by doing things like removing bad information, updating information that is still good, but maybe isn't the most up-to-date information. And so you can add more up-to-date information and things like that. And so you will see, like for a lot of disciplines, you will see the experts in those disciplines focus on Wikipedia editathons that concentrate on improving the Wikipedia pages associated with their expertise. So for instance, eye doctors might have a Wikipedia editathon time set aside, and eye doctors go in and they look at different eye conditions and different eye parts. They go in and they update the pages related to the cornea and the retina and things like glaucoma and recurrent corneal erosion, a condition that I used to have, by the way, and stromal puncture surgery and all of these, and LASIK surgery and all of these things. So they can go in and do those things, okay? And when you have the experts in the field actually going into Wikipedia and setting aside time to improving those articles, that is a very beneficial public service, in my opinion. They are making sure that the best possible knowledge is getting out there to the masses. And to me, that's one of the most honorable things you can do, because I work in the realm of information and had my entire adult life, whether I was a librarian or a newspaper reporter. Okay? So you have those editathons, and then a lot of times when you have librarians participating in editathons, and you may even want to check out this editathon page. This is a LibGuide, an editathon LibGuide, but it explains what Wikipedia editathons are. It's sponsored by UNLV, and you can really learn a lot about editathons here and how to participate in them and what you would do in one, or even if you wanted to set one up yourself, which you could. And what a lot of times when librarians participate in editathons, librarians tend to be generalists. They're not people who really specialize in the same way that, like, say, a political science professor specializes in political science, or an eye doctor specializes in eyes, or a lawyer might specialize in criminal law. Librarians tend to be more general, right? But having said that, a lot of times when librarians participate in editathons, things that they do a lot of times they are looking for things like bias. So they may go in and find pages that, let's say you have a Wikipedia page that doesn't appropriately and fairly cover the contributions of a particular, like let's say you have a particular thing, a particular phenomenon, and only white men are the ones who are given credit for their contributions to that particular thing. So a lot of times librarians will go in and check that bias. They'll add, what people of color have contributed and what women have contributed and what the differently able people have contributed to that phenomenon or that whatever the subject matter of that page is and things like that. So they check for bias a lot of times, librarians, when they do these sorts of things. And that's a lot of times what they're doing, but they are a lot of times also updating the information, getting the most up-to-date information out there, getting outdated information removed from those pages and things like that. So yes, librarians do, and a lot of times you will see, even on library listservs, you will see calls for people to participate in edit-a-thons, and that's very popular. And so I hope that some of you will be motivated to participate in edit-a-thons later on in your careers. I do want to say that, and I'll try to link these two pages in the announcement that I include this video in. So there is, at this particular at Anne Arundel Community College, which I think is either in Virginia or Maryland. At this community college, they are organizing an edit-a-thon, and it's an edit-a-thon related to it's corresponding with Women's History Month, which is March, which is the month that we're in. And this edit-a-thon, they are going to be concentrating on improving Wikipedia pages to, they'll probably be adding some Wikipedia pages about women who have notoriety and should have Wikipedia pages devoted to them but don't. You'll probably see some of those added. You'll also probably see different, like for different career fields, you might see the contributions of women added to those pages and things like that, and so on. And that is how we contribute a more, a more fair, a more diverse information landscape to information consumers through Wikipedia. So yeah, I'm going to try to actually include both the LibGuide here and the link to this article so that you can learn more about the edit-a-thons, or I might, let's see. Oh no, I don't want to do that. But the edit-a-thons, again, they happen all the time. If you get on library listservs, you'll see calls for people to participate in them. And I really do hope that as you all become information professionals, that you'll be motivated to participate in some edit-a-thons. You may find it fun, and you may find it worth your while to improve the information that your fellow human beings are consuming. So with that said, that's my spiel, but I do hope that that is going to add a lot of context and maybe even some enthusiasm to doing the Wikipedia edit assignment for you all. So I am going to leave it there. We are under 40 minutes, and this one does tend to be a longer video. I hope you sped it up. But having said that, I am Dr. Jace, and don't let a good edit-a-thon go to waste. We will see you all in that sync session next week. There will be no check-in video next week. All right. Have a good one.